Welcome back to another Footy Consultancy podcast. Today we have with us a very special guest. Me and myself and Carl will be conducting the interview. We have Mr. Jason Lee, 650 appearances for 18 different clubs. Good morning, Jason.
Good morning, man.
How's lockdown treating you?
Good. I've coped with it quite well, to be honest. I was saying earlier that, I still keep fit, mind and body, keep ticking over. Ensure that I'm not doing too many Zooms throughout the day. Yeah. 2 or 3 maybe at most. 2 or 3, and then, just make sure I get out. It's not good. It's not healthy to stay inside the house all day.
I agree. Good man. Well, we ask every guest that comes on a specific question, and we ask them, what is your it factor? So sometimes you walk down the park and you see a good player and you say he's got it. And, for us, we want to know what was your it factor and what carried you through to become a professional player.
I think, listen, I always congratulate every player that signs a scholarship for, because I've worked with every age group in the academy system and coached senior pros and managed as well. So to go into the system now at a young age, if you're talking under 8, whatever, it might even be younger than that, depends where you are and who you're working with. And to stay in the system to the age of 16, I think, wow, you've done incredibly well because, people don't understand the application that takes not only from the player, but the parents as well, to keep supporting that player. And if they haven't got that support from parents, and have they got that self-drive to motivate themselves and ensure that they're there, they don't miss training sessions, they keep improving. So any scholar for me at 16 that signs a scholarship, and I spend a lot of time in and around the clubs, I always say, look, well done. From here, obviously the work's not finished. You're going to have to keep fighting to get new contracts and to stay in the game. But it's not just about the technique, it's about the resilience. It's about having, as I said, the self-drive, the self-motivation to just keep working extremely hard and never assume that you've made it. I made my debut at 16 and a half at Charlton, and I wouldn't say I thought I made it, but to go back to the youth team after playing in the first team was mentally, I don't really want to be playing in the youth team. So there's lots of things that you have to overcome, you have to be prepared to keep working hard, keep proving yourself, because there's always going to be somebody that says you're not good enough or you're not for me. And it's an opinion at the end of the day. So, we talk about mental toughness and it's easier said than done, but just having that resilience to bounce back and to keep motivating yourself to push forward are the key components for me to be successful.
That's nice. Where did your footballing journey start? Where did it all begin for you?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it just there. Charlton Athletic, I'm from East London. Strangely enough, I used to drive past Leighton Orient to go to Charlton through Blackwall Tunnel, cross over the water to get to South London. But that's always the way. You don't get to play for your local club, We used to have cup finals at Leighton Orient on the pitch. I always thought I did enough and this, that and the other. But, friends and that got trials at various clubs. And I didn't, which I was always a good athlete, played basketball for London, did athletics, London Youth Games, I appeared in that. Pretty good all-rounder. I think that's what's carried me or held me in good stead throughout my careers. I've always been a really good all-round athlete, so I'd always encourage young people to play multi-sports. But Charlton Athletic offered me my first trial, really, in the professional game. So I'd have been 16. I came in late, so I wasn't one of those products who had been in and around football for many, many years at a professional level. But I've been playing at decent level, played for London, played for the district, whatever it may be. And then went in. And I think some of the rawness that I had at 16 was one of my strengths. I think people talk about street footballers and having that resilience and that mental toughness and, wherever you come from. I certainly had that because as soon as I arrived in at Charlton, I wasn't intimidated by senior professionals. I went in thinking, I'm here, I want to leave my mark and I want to get into that team as soon as possible. So Charlton Athletic was my first club, great club, good for giving young players an opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
It's interesting you talk about that resilience that you'd been brought up with from the street football that helped you when you went into the pro game, because that's something when we spoke up to Paul Davis. He said the same thing. His upbringing in South London helped him with the resilience when he went to the Arsenal first team, how to cope with that.
Yeah,
How important do you
definitely.
think resilience is for youth players making that transition?
I think where the game's changed now, and also we talk about obviously society and things are different. You know, when we was young, when I was young, I'm older than you two guys, but kids would go out as you know, and you'd come in when it was dark. So in the summer you'd be out there all day, and I'm not lying, you'd be playing football all day or doing whatever it may be, and you used to have back-to-back games on a Sunday, and you'd play on a Saturday, and you'd play games throughout the week and do athletics and basketball and everything else. So you just was out there all the time. You know, if you had the hunger for sport, the sport opportunities were still they were there. I mean, teachers spent time with children and pupils after school. You know, it's different now. I don't think kids spend as much time outside with their friends playing sport because of social media and you know computers and whatever it may be. So it's just different unless they're in an academy, unless someone's maybe driving them to say, look, come on, you need to go and train. Maybe it's a different mindset in that respect. But for me, it was there because your friends are out, you're out all day, and you're playing with people of various ages.
Yeah.
You know, if you're one of the young ones, you're gonna have to man up and kind of hold your corner. So that was one of the processes. I was brought up on an estate, so I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't easy. You know, when I was one of the youngers and I wanted to play football, I had to hold my own. Obviously, I got older, and there was quite a few from my area that went on to be professional footballers and whatever it may be. So that resilience, that toughness, to be able to hold your corner, I think, kind of puts you in the right place when you go into a sporting environment, which is you know extremely difficult to deal with, and some people can't cope with that.
Me and Carla are a similar age in our mid-30s, and we feel like we was the last of that generation that had that exposure to sport and playing from morning till evening. But when you did go in, how did it feel like going in at 16 years old and then at 16 and a half being accelerated into the first team? What was the feeling?
I mean, it was weird. I mean, I tell scholars these stories because with my current role, which we'll talk about later on, I mean, I spend time with young pros and senior professionals, and I think it's always good to relay your journey, which is what we're doing today, because you know, mentor, peer on peer, players learn. They wonder how they get from that to that. You know, I had 21 years as a pro. You know, how do you do that? The average time for a professional is 8 years. You know, that's the stat that we've looked at. Lots of players come out of the game at a young age, so it's more than talent. You know, there was loads of far more gifted players than myself who just didn't last in the game for various reasons. But when I went in at Charlton, as I said, I think well physically I was ready. That was one thing that probably stood out. I was tall. I was obviously quite lean, quite light because I used to do athletics. I was a sprinter in those days. The full-time professional game when I first started, when I went in as a scholar, I found difficult because of the training regime. And by the time I got home, and I wouldn't stay in digs as well. So I was commuting home every day. I'd get home. So I'd probably leave the house at 7 and get home by 5 or 6 or 7. And I would go to sleep pretty much. You know, there was no time for me to be hanging about with my friends. I was absolutely shattered. So that I found quite difficult. But once I overcame that pretty quickly, I did accelerate. You used the word accelerate. I picked up very quickly that right, here's where I am. Look at the environment I'm in. You know, there's professionals. How am I gonna, you know, impress upon the manager and coaches that I actually want to play in that team? When I used to see the first team players training, I used to think I can do that. You know, I used to watch them. I used to watch the extra. And when I got called over and had opportunities to train with them, they knew I was getting involved because I used to get involved in all sorts of things that I shouldn't have been getting involved in. The manager would be saying, calm down. Coaches would be saying, hold on a minute. Some of the pros would love it and think, yeah, you do for me. Some of the pros didn't like it, you know, because some senior pros don't take kindly to that. But that's what it's all about, you know. If you have an opportunity, go and grab it. As far as I was concerned, they were just people that was a bit older than me with a bit more experience. So no, I was definitely up for that.
So you made your mark, literally,
Yeah.
and found yourself training with the youth team again.
Mm.
Did that give you extra motivation, or did it dishearten you at any time?
We had a really good youth team, and to be fair, the years, probably 2 or 3 years above as well. So as talented crop.
Yeah.
You know, we got to the FA Youth Cup final. I was one of the younger ones. You know, I played in some of the earlier rounds, but didn't play in the final, which was a two-leg one against Coventry. And you know, out of that first team, out of that team that played in the FA Youth Cup final, probably 5 or 6 got pro contracts and went on to have professional careers. And then the younger group, which was my age group, you know, there was people like Scott Minto, who played for Chelsea, left back, who works in the media. And there was Gordon Watson, who was my strike partner. He played at Southampton, Sheffield Wednesday. Who else was there? Can't remember. There was Michael Bennett, who works for the PFA, you know, well-being. There was Cole Lieben. There was a number of players who actually showed that they had not only the potential, but they actually went on to have professional careers. So I knew I was in good company in that respect. So to go back and play in the youth team, when you consider the Southeast counties, which is what we used to play in those days,
Yeah.
boy, was it competitive. I'm talking about a year older was Kevin Campbell at Arsenal. You know, he was scoring 50 or 60 a goal. Andy Cole was my age. He was a year younger. Kwame Ampadu, father of Ethan Ampadu, you know, who's obviously in good heritage there. And then there was myself and Gordon Watson. Then there was Alan Shearer, who was at Southampton, who, believe it or not, was kind of behind us in his development. That just shows you Alan Shearer at Southampton wasn't where he needed to be, but he was progressing. And we was probably ahead. I made my debut in the first team weeks before Alan Shearer. And then he made his debut, you know, and the rest is history, but we're not going to talk about him. But there were some really good players around that youth level. So you wonder and you look at it and you think, wow, these players have gone on to do, you know, extremely good things in the game. So, yeah, being accelerated in and around the first team gave me an opportunity to, I realised very, very quickly that I think I can be a pro.
Yeah.
You know, there's far more worse things going on that are going to test me outside of football.
Yeah.
So I can deal with it. You know, the ups and downs of football, someone saying you're not good enough or this and the other, or someone giving me abuse. Nah, that's not going to touch me. There's worse things going on outside football. It's being able to manage that. So football for me was, it wasn't tough in that respect. As I said, I had the self-resilience to keep pushing through a lot of ups and downs.
So what progressed next? What was your next move in football?
Are we talking still my playing career?
Yeah, still in your playing career.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned I played for a lot of teams. I played for a lot of clubs. That wasn't really my choice to be the journeyman footballer. You know, it'd been far easier to just start one football club. You know, when I was young, I mean, I went on my first holiday, I think when I was 19, left the country, and coming out of London, I only, you know, for me, coming out of London was on a coach playing football. I wasn't leaving London to go and do anything else.
Yeah.
So to play in the first team at a young age, I went out on loan twice. I went out on loan to a team called Fisher Athletic, which was like the conference back in the day. And the manager then was a guy called Malcolm Allison. Now, for those that don't know him, this guy was a legend within football. You know, he managed Man City. Okay. Used to wear a big fedora hat. Yeah. Forget Pharrell Williams and all these guys. Malcolm Allison was a don. He used to wear this big hat back in the day. Man City, and he managed Crystal Palace as well back in the day. So he came to watch me, as you do back in those days. Just turned up at the training ground, was watching me train, and said, "Look, come on loan, you know, for a month." And having played in the first team and then being sent back to the youth team, I thought, well, I'm going to do that. So I always had that mindset. Well, I'm not playing here where I want to play. I want to go and play senior football, men's football, and see what I'm about. So I had a really good spell out on loan, came back, again, didn't want to stay in and around the youth team. Went out on loan to Stockport County. And that was tough because that was the first time I had to spend time away from home and obviously be with people that I wasn't familiar with. So people that understand that side of the game, young players have to learn to be away from home and to be able to cope with that scenario, because you just never know where you're going to end up. So that was my stages. I had to do that. I had to leave London. I signed for Lincoln at the age of 19.
Yeah.
That for me was really tough mentally. Leaving London, bought our first property, living up north, traveling home every weekend to be back home with friends and family. I just thought I can't spend the weekend up north. But then you settle down, you start to slow down. You realise that this is what my life's going to be.
Yeah.
And then you end up showing people. I thought I showed people that I was prepared to move and not be a player. So a lot of players will play regionally and maybe play for those teams.
Yeah.
For me, I showed at 19 I could come out of London. So I ended up playing up north, going back to London, coming back up north, going back to London. I ended up playing at both ends of the country, showing people that, look, I'll go where I need to go to just keep progressing my career. I was never a player that wanted to just sit there picking up wages for not actually playing first team football.
Yeah.
First team football is a be all and end all for me. It might not be for every player, and that's something that we can talk about another time. But for me, first team football was the only thing that really mattered. I understood that I might have to drop out if I was injured, lack of form, but getting back to that first team was all, that's all that mattered to me. That was the only place for me to play my game.
So when it materialized, you was on the verge of getting a big move to Nottingham Forest. How did you feel about that? And how did you feel you had to push yourself and challenge yourself to get in that first team?
That happened. I mean, listen, I did my dues. Don't get me wrong, but that happened really quickly. When you talk about acceleration, I went from the 4th division, obviously League 2 now.
Yeah.
Within a year, I went from Lincoln to Southend, which was the championship. Yeah. Southend, great team, unbelievable season. If we would have stayed together, we would have been the new Wimbledon without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah. We was flying. We was 3rd in the championship. Barry Fry was the manager. He assembled all lower league players. Barnet had financial problems. They disbanded. So he pretty much brought the whole squad over to Southend. They still had players there, quality players. Chris Powell was there at the time, left back. Brett Angel, Ricky Otto. I went in. Jamie Lawrence came in on trial in the summer, but signed for Sunderland. So they could have had 3 strikers with dreadlocks at the time, which was crazy. But they only had me and Ricky. They let Jamie go. So I went from Lincoln to Southend. We was unbelievable that season, beating all the big teams. Wolves was in that league, beat them home and away. Middlesbrough, Sunderland. We just was not overawed by anybody. And then by March of the same season, Forest was in that season in that league. They got relegated the season before.
Yeah.
They was doing well. I mean, Stan Collymore was scoring goals, but they hit a tricky patch, and also Stan was injured around February, March. So Forest came calling, and they came in and they signed me in the March. So I only spent 7 months going from Lincoln to Championship, so 4th division to the 2nd division, then okay, big move to Forest. And it was a big move because Forest was still considered to be a 1st division Premier League team in those days. Dropping out for them was a big disappointment. So yeah, big move, couldn't wait for it, went there, went straight in the 1st team. As I said, Stan was injured. And then Stan came back and we played together and we saw the season out and we managed to get promotion back into the top flight. So I realised as soon as I arrived at Forest, and I knew before because I'd played various games, whether it be pre-season or in the cup, what a big club Forest was and their expectation. And that was a journey, Premier League, European football. Yeah, brilliant. It just accelerated, as you said.
How did it feel like getting back in the Premier League and in your first season, meeting those kind of expectations, finishing 3rd and then going into Europe and playing Bayern Munich? It must have been a real buzz around the ground.
It was great. There were good times. I mean, I'm currently an ambassador for Forest. I've always supported that club in a way that I could to try to help. I worked there outside of coaching. I coached some of the players I coached are playing first team football, which is really good to see. You know, Joe Roll was part of my 15, 16s.
Yeah.
You know, he's in the first team. He's captain the club. Tyler Walker, son of Des, brilliant striker. He was playing centre half, believe it or not, when I first saw him. And no way should he be playing centre half. The pressure was too much. You know, your dad was one of the best centre halves. I could really see straight away his body language that he wasn't really enjoying playing maybe centre half. He wasn't a player who wanted to head the ball. He was technically proficient, quick. And as soon as we played him up front, we saw a different player. You know, he showed the appetite and the real enthusiasm to go and be a striker. So yeah, you know, working at Forest was always one of the things that I really enjoyed over the years. I've always gave back. I sit on their community trust board, and I've always tried to support them in that respect. But it's a big club with a fantastic fan base. But like a lot of teams that have dropped out of the Premier League, it's not easy to get back. You know, it's kind of the graveyard of football. You spend a lot of money outside the Premier League to get back in, and sometimes financially that really damages you and you never recover.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Nottingham Forest at the time, you had some real big characters, the likes of your Stuart Pearce, your Stan Collymores. What was it like training?
It was good, and if we go back to the fact that I said when I was 16, if you can remember what I said, what I was like at 16, I was definitely the same at 22, 23. Okay, I arrived at a club with international players, and Piercy, you know, a good friend of mine, he came back and managed the club, and it didn't quite work out, but he knew straight away, you know, I'm here to leave my mark. You know, there was international players, but I didn't care. If there was a running session, I'd be at the front or I'd be near the front. I'd be working my socks off. If we're playing a small-sided game or 11v11, it's on. It's on. Do you know what I mean? If you get through this game and you survive, then you got a chance of maybe playing at the weekend. That's the way I used to look at it. You know, if you do well, it's harsh. People don't realise how harsh it can be when you're playing reserves v the first team. Because, you know, if you're in the reserves, you want to be in the first team. And if you don't, certainly there's something wrong with your attitude. So it can boil over. But Stuart Pearce was great. You know, he came from non-league football. He came into the game at a late age. So he certainly understood where my desire came from. And, you know, I think he kind of appreciated that, because what Forest had previously, and the fact that they got relegated, was a little bit of a soft underbelly. You know, teams turned them over. That Wimbledon would be one side that would have always gave them a hard time. But in my time at Forest, we never lost to Wimbledon. Yeah. And I always thought I would play for Wimbledon because I probably would have fitted in to their DNA, because, you know, we manned, you know, we kind of manned up to the intimidation, Vinnie Jones, whatever it may be. No, not today. And you have to fight fire with fire. You can't always be labelled a team that's playing pretty football and can get bullied when the whistle blows. So no, I think that the club went through a transition. You know, we grew physically. The team was bigger, stronger, still had technical players. Brian Royal came in, unbelievable player technically. Lars Bohinen. Alf-Inge Haaland was there. He couldn't get a game. Obviously went on to Man City, even for me with Roy Keane, but he couldn't get a game. We had some really talented players. Scott Gemmell, Kevin Campbell came in, Chris Bart-Williams. Chris Bart-Williams, I think, was the first £1 million 16-year-old, went from Leighton Orient to Sheffield Wednesday. So the manager knew what he was doing, Frank Clark. You know, he knew lower league players. He was working at Leighton Orient. He knew Kevin Campbell. You know, Kevin Campbell went on loan there. He knew myself from Charlton. He knew Des Little. So he changed the DNA of that team from being a team that maybe lost its hunger and desire to young, hungry, committed players with a physical element.
Yeah, I remember that team well, because it broke my heart when Ian Woon scored against Newcastle United. I'll never forget that. I still have nightmares about it now.
Yeah, talented player, Woney. You know, great wonder of a left foot. I scored against Newcastle United, but we lost. Okay. I was sub, came on, remember scoring the goal, and we didn't play well that day. But, you know, to be fair, I always enjoyed playing at St James's Park. The atmosphere if it's right, you know, I can only imagine if you're playing for Newcastle doing well. But it's the same thing. If you're not doing well, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're playing in front of a team and you're not doing well, it can be quite intimidating. So as an away team, we always kind of enjoyed going there because the pressure was always on the home team.
Yeah.
You had Steve Stone as well, who's from up this way, and he's went on to do some coaching.
Tell me about it.
For a while.
Stoney, great lad. I mean, when I arrived at, I forget Stoney. Stoney his work rate was unbelievable, and he could play, but his work rate was incredible. He used to get all over the park. And when I arrived, I never forget. I first arrived at Forest, and you walk into the change room and this, that, and the other. And yeah, I had lots of hair in those days, believe it or not. I arrived and I looked at Stoney and I was like, how old are you then? Stoney was the same age, and Stoney was clinging on. Honestly, he was clinging on. It was like Charlie Brown. There was threads of hair everywhere. And yeah, Steve Stone, great lad, great group of players. And I think to be successful, you have to have a really good crop of players that gel, personality-wise as well. Because when you're in the trenches, you need to go that bit further. If you haven't got the squad mentality right, you get found out.
I believe you mentioned earlier, like you didn't really want to be a journeyman. But do you believe that resilience you built up attracted so many clubs? I mean, you played for 18 clubs.
Yeah.
Did it make you feel like you was always wanted, or did it make you feel the opposite?
See, that's a good question, interesting question, because my mindset was never to be languishing outside of the first team. So you know, as a player, as soon as you're done, you're not getting a game and this, that, and the other, and the manager doesn't fancy you or somebody else comes in, you know. So what are you going to do? I was never out of contract as a player. So despite what people might have to say about this, that, and the other, you know, the free transfers only came right at the back end of my career. There was always transfers involved. I was always bought. I was always wanted by another team. There was always another manager or coach that appreciated what I offered. And why would I stay somewhere not playing when I could actually go somewhere else and go and play first team football? So for me, it was a no-brainer. And I even made the choices to drop down divisions with the full sight that, you know, I might bounce back or I can help a team get promoted, which happened. I left Forest. I went to Watford, you know, former England manager. You know, that was great boost. I was his first signing when he first went back the second time. You know, Graham Taylor rings me up and says, look, you can help me rebuild this team. Ronnie Rosenthal, we brought in from Tottenham. Young gifted Noel Williams was my strike partner, 17 years of age. Kind of took him under my wing. We won that league, you know, back-to-back promotion. So if there's another project, if there's something else that can, you know, kind of reinvigorate you and get you moving and you go, you kick on again, then that's what you should do. I always encourage players when players are telling me, yeah, what should I do? Go, move on, go on loan, whatever it may be, change your circumstances. Don't wait, you know, you feel like it's always out of your hands, but kind of take some ownership, go and do something, be proactive, go and play the games, go and show people that, you know what, if it's not here, I've still got something to offer, because you just never know where your footballing career is going to end. And you could pick up an injury. Players sometimes sit on their contracts far too long and then wonder how their careers kind of disappeared because they don't get picked up again. You know, their contract expires. They end up maybe not getting to play first team football anywhere else. And it's a hard journey to come back in.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, you know, with that mentality that you had to go out and want to play first team football, do you think that gave you a good reputation in terms that you was willing to always adapt to a different style to progress your career?
Certainly. I mean, that was the point. So I never took it as a slight that I had to leave a club. I never thought, when I was young, you know, as I said, the biggest wrench, and I overcame it very quickly, was leaving Charlton to go to Lincoln.
Yeah.
Team that was in the first division to the fourth division. And the manager of Lincoln was Steve Thompson, who was like captain of Charlton. So I knew him from playing in the reserves with him. And he knew me from my mentality. So he was like, look, come and play fourth division football with me. It won't be long before you go and prove yourself. And I played close to 100 games by the age of 21.
Yeah.
That is important. You know, when you've got under 23, you know, development squads, you know, as a coach, first thing you're doing, you're looking at the CV. If you've been out and learned, if you've played any football, and they've got very few games, very few senior first team football games. So you know they're going to be okay, technically proficient, you can put on the drills. But what's their resilience that we talked about before? How are they going to handle men's football?
Yeah.
So at some stage, you have to just go and put yourself in that situation. So that was the only time that I found it tough. But after that, it was like, okay, I'll do what I need to do. I'll keep moving. And invariably, you know, I moved for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Always to progress my career, not as opposed to just sitting there. So I never had no regrets in that respect.
So would your message to young players be put the football first? Because a lot of them are trying to put the money first.
Always put the football first, because if you know the cream rises to the top, and I've had to deal with intermediaries or agents, but you know the new term is intermediaries. I've had to speak to them and this, that, and the other, and everyone's got a different agenda. I understand that, but when I'm speaking to the player, which is the only person that I'm really interested in, listen, don't sit there and wait on other people to make decisions for you. You know, at the end of the day, the money will come if you're good enough. The contracts will take care of themselves. And also, I learned when I was young, I had a few agents, but probably at the age of 23 onwards, there was no more agents for me. I had the confidence to say, you know what? If people don't know what I'm about now, they never will. I will negotiate my contracts. I will, you know what I mean? I will have those conversations with people. I don't need to rely upon somebody else to do that. So there is that worry for me that young players tend to be over-reliant upon other people for advice, and they don't take ownership of what it is they're going to do. And then invariably, they probably want to blame somebody else when things have not gone the way they would have hoped it would work out, you know?
I think there's, Dave, two examples of this happening now with two players from my club, with Ivan Toney and Adam Armstrong, who are both sitting in Newcastle's under 23s, weren't really getting the opportunities in the first team, decided to drop down the divisions, and now are both being touted with moves back to the Premier League, and both flying in the 20s this season for goals in the Championship. And I think it's massive to see that these guys that weren't getting the opportunities decided, I'm going to leave a Premier League club, I'm going to drop down the divisions, but now they're well on the way of making it back into that.
Great case studies, and I'm sure you use those, and I use case studies. Like I remember I was managing Boston United, Conference North, and coaches and managers asking me, any decent players down that level? Yeah. Okay, we've got Andre Gray, he's playing at Hinckley up the road. I tried to sign him. Andre Gray went in. Eventually, a club took the chance to bring him back. You've got Jamie Vardy, he's not bad. You know, he might do okay. First £1 million non-league player. He was playing at Fleetwood, then Halifax, or the other way around, whatever it may be. Who else was there? There was Dwight Gale. Gailey was down at Bishop Stortford. As soon as I saw him play, I was thinking, wow, because I had two senior professionals at Boston who had played probably 500 league games between them. And I was like, okay, you know, you need to go and manage this kid, go and get hold of him, try and intimidate him, bully him, whatever it may be. And it just never happened. He bounced up. His attitude was incredible. He scored an absolute worldie. And I could just see that this kid has got something. You know, at the end of the day, he's not feeling sorry for himself. You drop out of the game, you drop out of the league, which is these three players, these examples that I just mentioned, and they showed the resilience and the application to bounce back. And it happened for a reason. There are lots of players who drop out who don't come back because they get brought down to that level. You know, they might get into a drinking culture or whatever it may be. There's no point dropping down and saying, I'm better than this. Show people you're better than this week in, week out, and show people that you don't deserve to be there. And I learned that at a young age from coaches and managers when they told me, because coaches and managers always tell you, I saw you play on this day somewhere. Or I saw you warm up. And I took it as a coach when I was managing as well. Go and watch a warm up, go and watch players on a good weather day, on a bad weather day, watch the warm up, speak to as many people as you can get a good feeling for, and find out what their attitude is all about. And these players that come back clearly have shown the right attitude to come back. They're better than the level that they've dropped down to. It don't just happen.
Yeah.
The players that have dropped down who become like, they struggle to come back. And I played non-league football at the age of 41 for a reason, because I was still up for that fight. You know, it wasn't about a scalp and allowing somebody to say, oh yeah, you know, I got the better of Jason Lee today. I enjoyed the battle, thinking, no, that's not going to be the case. You can go home and tell somebody else that you had a difficult afternoon, probably 20 years between us. But yeah, you have to have that hunger. This is an incredibly competitive sport. You know, people, the general public don't give professional footballers probably enough credit. You know, we work extremely hard to get to where we get to for a reason. And as soon as you drop off, then obviously things do not work out how you want them to be.